Hello everyone, my name is Akanksha Nani, and welcome to my YouTube channel Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism spectrum disorder, and more. On the channel, I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists, seeking their views and updates on their latest work, research, etc. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. My guest today, Dr. Nouchine Hadjikhani, is a prominent neuroscientist and researcher known for her work in the field of neuroimaging. She is currently an associate professor in radiology at Harvard Medical School, where she directs the Neurolimbic Research Laboratory, and a professor in experimental child and adolescent psychiatry in the Sahlgrenska Academy, Gothenburg University, Sweden. She is an author of more than 147 peer-reviewed articles of books, book chapters, and other publications, and is highly cited, with more than 19,500 citations. EEG and MEG, as well as behavioral methods, including eye tracking and sensors, to study the normal and the diseased brain. Her present research is centered on two brain conditions that have in common an imbalance between the brain's excitatory and inhibitory systems, autism and migraines. In the field of autism, she demonstrated that low-level visual processing is normal in individuals with autism, ruling out a bottom-up deficit. She was also the first to provide data disproving a popular theory stating that individuals with autism lack the brain area devoted to face identification, the fusiform face area, or FFA. More recently, she demonstrated that the affective empathy is preserved in individuals with autism. Her current work is dedicated to understanding the neural basis of the social difficulties in ASD and to develop neural biomarkers that will help objectify the effect of therapeutic approaches, both behavioral and pharmacological. Her latest research addresses the roots of eye contact difficulties in autism and how to improve them. Professor Hadjikhani's group has also done impressive work in the field of migraines, visualizing the changes in neuronal activity during migraine aura. She has since been studying the long-term consequences of migraines on brain anatomy and function, and has more recently demonstrated that migraine attacks result in neuroinflammation in the brain. For her outstanding research in the field of autism, she received the Nicholas Oberg LifeWatch Award in 2016 and the Lennards Award in 2010. Dr. Hadjikhani, a very warm welcome and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Akansh, for inviting me to take part in your amazing series of videos.
Thank you for the compliment. It means a lot. To just jump right into it, could you please share your journey into neuroscience and what led you to focus on autism research?
It's a very long story. I don't know how much time you have, but I've always been interested in the brain. Actually, I started by studying literature and linguistics and heard about aphasia, and I was fascinated by the fact that depending on the type of aphasia you had, it was a different part of the brain that was being affected. And so I decided to study the brain. So I went to med school and I did everything I could do that had a neuro in the beginning of its name, and I ended up doing my thesis in neuroanatomy and neurophysiology. And this was the time when brain imaging was starting. We are in the 90s, and so I started doing brain imaging, and I was mostly interested in the visual system, how the visual system is very complicated. We have complex maps of different things in the brain, and I was trying to understand better how these maps are organized. And basically, this is what led me to both migraine and autism research. And in autism research, I was approached by a group who was wondering whether the fact that autistic people are super good at details was because there was something different in the way the primary visual cortex was organized, which is not the case. And then also this was the period when this paper came out saying people with autism don't have a fusiform face area. They see people like objects, which sounded like a simple, nice story, but I could not buy it because I was also working with people who had what is called prosopagnosia. That is people who after a stroke or even they were grown like that, they have difficulties recognizing face identity. These people have often a lesion in the face area, but they absolutely have different profiles than autistic people. And I felt like these two things don't go together. I had also noticed when I was interacting with autistic people that there was this tendency not to be looking me in the face and in the eyes. And so I thought, okay, so how do we know that when we were testing people, they were actually looking at those faces? And could it be the case that you don't find activation there because just people were not looking there? And so I used the knowledge I had acquired doing this kind of more theoretical brain mapping of the visual system to make sure that all the faces were contained in the same circle with a fixation cross that I put here between the eyes. And I told people, just make sure that you look there. And there I showed, and I was the first one of many other studies that actually, once you made sure that they were looking at the faces, the face area was activating. And then, this opens all kind of different questions. Is it, the root or of other difficulties, etc., etc.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. In your opinion, what are the most common misconceptions about autism that you hope your research can help dispel?
Two things, and I think one of the most important one was you would hear that people with autism don't have empathy. And this is an insane idea when you've been with people with autism and you see how they react and interact. And so I was just feeling that, again, we are looking at something wrongly here. And so one of my research has shown that when you show images of people suffering, and I was collaborating with a group that had videos of people from a shoulder clinic. So every time they were moving their shoulders, you could see this grimace of pain. And I was showing that to autistic people and to controls. And what I showed was that people with autism had exactly the same huge amount of activation in all these areas that we know are involved in empathy. The thing that they did not have and that the controls had was the prefrontal cortex that comes and kind of tones down everything and helps you take the distance, and has this kind of helps you to dissociate you with the person in trouble. And so for me, when people with autism did not come to offer you comfort and help, it's because they were simply overwhelmed and they were just trying to protect themselves more than anything else. And to me, it was really important to stop this concept of people with autism have no empathy. I think they have over empathy and they don't know how to deal with it and how to cope with it. And they try to find ways to sometimes take distance, and one of them can be just going away. But this does not mean that they don't care. In the contrary, they care a lot. So that's been one thing. And the other one is, it's not really a misconception, but it's all and I'm sure we're going to talk more about that, but it's all about eye contact in autism and what it means actually.
And my next question was about the technologies you use in your research on autism and why technologies like fMRI scans and MEG scans are so difficult to use, and the alternatives that.
So when you do brain imaging, you are using very sophisticated tools that are very sensitive to a lot of things, including motion. So imagine for fMRI, you lying down and you're watching a mirror that projects a screen that's behind you on which you have images that are projected, and then you have often a button box or something and you click a button when you see certain things. So we are very far from normal life, and there is only so much you can do in those circumstances. And of course, excuse me, you need to be extremely still and not moving, which is something you can ask people to do when they are completely understanding and with normal intelligence, it's much more difficult with somebody who has more communication difficulties, and so that's also why a lot of research on autism has concentrated on these so-called high-functioning people with whom you could actually perform this kind of imaging. MEG, you're sitting instead of lying down most of the time, and you have this huge thing over your head, but it's the same. You should not be moving very much, otherwise the data become very difficult to analyze. So it's very useful, and we've learned a lot from what we've learned there. But then you want to also find something that is first less costly, because it costs several thousands per hour of scanning time when you use these kind of machines, and so not everybody has this kind of money. Also, often what you get is group data. I mean, you need to average from several people until you get something that is significantly different from one group to the other. And that's also a problem in terms of personalized medicine or things like that. When you have people participate in the study, usually they want to know for themselves what it means. And often you can't tell them anything because it's like, it's per group. So that's why I started more and more using eye tracking, because eye tracking is much less costly method, and you can be sitting, in a face-to-face interaction or in front of a screen. There are different techniques, different methods, but you can even forget that you have a camera filming where you are, and yet you can see exactly what people are attending to with their eye. And there is a lot you can learn from not only eye movement, but also pupil dilation and things like that. So it's been an option that I've been using more and more now. Also making the link between what I was finding in fMRI or other techniques with the findings in eye tracking, and trying to show that when things are connected. I mean, it's not two different things that I'm looking. For example, I know that if I force people to look into the eyes, there will be a huge activation in the amygdala, and that I see with fMRI. But then if I do the same in eye tracking, what I would say is like the pupils dilate because of the amygdala activation. So it's different ways to understand what's going on in the brain.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And one question I had is, I'd imagine that the sound would also be problematic for many individuals from the MRI and MEG scans.
Yeah, the MEG scan is very silent. That's the good thing about the MEG scan is it's the room is very silent. But you're absolutely right. fMRI scans these very, very loud beeps, and of course we put protection in the ears and so forth. But it's quite stressful, especially if you're not used to be in that kind of environment.
And your research highlights sensory processing differences in individuals with autism. Can you elaborate on these differences and their implications?
So yeah, I think basically you could see the brain of autistic people. I don't want to make huge generalities, because we know that it's a huge spectrum, and there might be a lot of variation. But the way I understand it mostly is like it's an hyper excitable brain. There is too much excitation and not enough inhibition. The brakes don't work very well. So that means that everything is perceived more strongly, and everything has more difficulties being damped down. The distance that you can take with this stimuli is more difficult. So smells can be easily too much. Specific visual stimuli are overwhelming. Sounds can be too much, and we can. I don't know if you've ever had a migraine, and migraine are also a problem of a hyperexcitable brain. But people who have migraines, they know that during the time when they have a migraine attack, they want to be in the dark, they want to have no sound, and they want to have no smells, and they need just to cocoon, if you want, until it goes away. And everybody can understand that. One has to understand that for autistic people, sometimes they also need this time off and blocking all these things, because it's just too much, and they can't process so much.
Wow, thank you. I never knew about that connection. How do you think visual perception anomalies in autism provide insights into the condition's neural basis?
Well, what I've been pursuing is the social brain. And my hypothesis is that there are difficulties in social contacts because faces and especially eyes are aversive. Why could that be the case? So we have to go back all the way to birth and the first months of development. If there is, like I believe, too much excitation and too little inhibition when the child is born, what does a baby see all the time? Is faces, is people looking at them and smiling at them and interacting with them. And we are born with a face processing system that's not developed yet. It's basically, it goes what's called subcortically. There is a very old system that you can find in other animals as well, that goes from the eye to the supracolliculus to the amygdala, that basically processes some type of stimuli that are very important for survival. That's how we evolved. Okay, and face is one of these stimuli that have preferential treatments, if you want, because we need to be interacting with the people who are going to save our lives when we are newborns. And over time, these things normally gets transferred to more cortical areas, and you look at faces and you learn to see them, and you will develop this whole social brain. In autism, because there is this overexcitation, there is this famous Heb's rule: what fires together wires together. So you have suddenly the amygdala gets overactivated by faces, by eyes. And as things develop, eyes become something that is more felt like a threat. And so instead of looking and spending a lot of time looking at faces, you learn to turn away because it's a very unpleasant thing to do. And if you don't look normally at faces, you will not learn the gazillion very subtle things that are happening in a face that communicates, everything when you interact with somebody. And so this is how and this is my understanding. It might be completely wrong, but this is how I see it, is people look away because they are overwhelmed by eye contact, and because they've been looking away for so many years, they haven't learned all the codes, if you want, of all these little things that happen in a face that we normally progressively learn and become experts at.
Why do you think it's so important to understand research for families? What are some adverse effects that you see of not knowing or understanding the implications of research?
Well, first, I think, I'm coming from a French-speaking country where for a very long time, and there are still people who think that autism is due to bad mothers, or refrigerator mothers, and horrible, stupid things like that. So I think it's very important that people are aware that research has shown that autism has nothing to do with bad parenting. It has everything to do with genes and environments, and the combination of both that makes you more susceptible to it. So I think that's already a very important thing. Don't feel guilty that you have. It's already very challenging to have an autistic child, and if you have on top of that the guilt of it's your fault, that's terrible. So that's the first basic thing why I think it's important that parents understand what's going on in research. The other thing is also to go back to the eye contact thing. When you look in ABA, for example, there is a lot of insistence of you have to have them look you in the eyes, and you kind of insist until they do that. And I've shown that when you do that, it's like, imagine you have fears of spider, and I'm flashing you these big spiders at you all the time. It's not good. It puts you in a place you don't want to be. So I think it's really important to understand that, okay, this is not something that they have no interest in. It's something that's painful and stressful. So what do? You go slowly, you habituate, you introduce things, and you let people at their own pace get used first maybe to puppy's eyes or baby's eyes, and then children, and then children. I have to say it to you, we published a nice small pilot study where we put together a program in several steps, and people went home with a computer and an eye tracking system, and they were doing this exercises, looking at these faces, and we were adapting how long they were spending looking in the eyes through the eye tracker, if they had to redo or not the sequence, and so forth. And we showed, it was a very small study, but people were very happy about that, and made progress, and they thought it was interesting to first understand their problem, because a lot of people don't understand what's wrong with not looking in the eyes. And so I think, yeah, habituation, slow habituation, and not making it a big deal is important. On the other hand, people around need to understand also that this is not a lack of interest, a lack of attention, or anything like that, and that if the person you're talking to is not looking at you, it's probably because they are trying to concentrate in what you're saying to make more sense of it. So that's where, it's important that parents understand that research shows that, and this is what you can do out of it, if this makes sense to you.
Yes, it does. That was very detailed. Thank you. How can research findings, like your research findings, be translated into practical applications for improving the lives of individuals with autism?
It's once you understand the sequence of action, you know better how to act on that. So once you understand that not looking in the eyes is not something that is because of bad will, then you can go back and say, okay, what can I do to improve that? And how can I do to make the person I'm trying to help the best? How do I praise them? How do I try to avoid certain things, etc., etc.? So it's basically understanding that, try to keep away everything that's stressful, or have it at small levels and increasing, and then create this environment where the person feels safe, and slowly take them by the hand and help them through.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. And how do you think public awareness and understanding of autism has evolved over the years? And what more do you think can be done?
I think public awareness has increased tremendously in the last 10 years, which is really good. And I think the whole neurodiversity movement also has helped broadening the scope of that. The problem is sometimes also it becomes a little complicated, because, as I said earlier, autism is a huge spectrum, and you have, at what end of the spectrum, kids that never learn to speak and bang their head on walls and have really terrible difficulties. And at the other hand, you have super geeks, engineers that are extremely good at things. So you can't take that as one group. I mean, it's what you say for one person is not going to be valid for the other person. But it's good that people are aware that autism exists. People are aware of the fact that environment is playing a huge role, and be also, we've been able to realize that some drugs needed to be avoided during pregnancy because they increase the risk of autism, for example, things like that. There is also another thing that to me is extremely important. It's something that you and I talked when we had our little conversation the other day, is the police doesn't know a lot about autism, and you have people who die because of police acting in a way that they did because they felt threatened or in danger and so forth. So spreading awareness also in specific environments where it can be a question of life or death is super important. And this is something that you're doing a great job spreading. And I think it needs more of that, because it should never happen.
Thank you very much for the compliment. I really appreciate it. I've just been playing a part in what Pragnya, the organization I volunteer with, is doing, but thank you.
Yeah, but it's important, every little stone in that big building is important, and it's volunteering is so crucial to help him, Yeah.
Thank you. What advice would you give to young researchers and students interested in pursuing careers in neuroscience and autism research?
Advice for a new researcher is ask yourself, put yourself in the shoes of families with an autistic child. What is their needs? What is their challenges? What needs to be addressed? I mean, yeah, it's great to do also, sophisticated epigenetic research and so forth. It's important, but I would say it's also important that people first analyze the needs and how can we address those needs, and what type of research is going to eventually maybe help addressing those needs. So that's how I would the advice I would give. But also the biggest advice is meet people, work with people with autism, spend time and interact and understand, because it's so easy to go from college to university to research lab and start putting people in machine, and you have had no real interaction, so you don't know what you're talking about, really. I mean, it's really important to spend time, interact, and have some kind of life experience to better understand where the needs are, who you're trying to help, and how you can do that.
I think that's really important as well. And is there anything else you would like to share about your work or the future of neuroscience and autism research?
Well, there are so many things I could talk about. I mean, I'm also interested in girls. Why have girls with autism being so underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed for such a long time? This is something that has been kind of pushed aside for long. It needs to be brought back more. Treatments, how can we best treat with behavioral therapy, with pharmacotherapy? I mean, there is a lot that will need to be done in the future with that. We need good objective markers. There is a recent big pharmacological phase 3 study that failed, and I think that one of the reason it failed is because they were using subjective markers as opposed to objective markers. So questionnaires and things like that is much more, it's much easier to be subjective than measuring a reaction time or an accuracy or things like that. So the importance of objective markers is crucial, I think, in autism, so that we can test whatever approach you want to have to support them.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very big field, and you've explained to me like exactly how under covered it is, and how little focus there is, even though just because that's 1/4 maybe of the community, which I feel is a very unfair thing that's been happening so far. Dr. Hadjikhani, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, and congratulations on the amazing success. I'm so excited to read your next paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akansh. Thank you, and I wish you a very successful career. I know you will, and everything you do is really impressive. So congrats.